Welcome to Gracefully Greying. I am your host, attorney Henry Gornbein. Today on Gracefully Greying, I am pleased to welcome as my guest Garry Cole, the author of the book, Are We Old Yet? Sounds like as a kid, when you had children and you were traveling, are we there yet? But are we old yet? The age-old question. Welcome, Garry. First of all, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Um, First of all, thank you, Henry, for having me on your show. And I want to point out that the fact that you identified as a kid, we would say, are we there yet? And actually, that is absolutely the impetus behind the title. And I tell a story in the book about how that came to be. But tell you a few things about me, and the audience may want to know about me. First, I am a baby boomer. I am part of that wonderful demographic that was born between 1946 and 1964. This demographic is so large, we've got our own nickname. They call us the Silver Tsunami, and we are large and growing. As a matter of fact, 11,000 people turn the age of 65 every day in the United States. And by the year 2034, it's projected to be there'll be more people over 65 than there will be young people under the age of 18. So with this growth, we're kind of coming into our own. And for the first time in my life, I will suggest that it is cool to be old. And the other thing you may want to know about me is that my work status is I claim to be semi-retired.
Garry, that leads to the next question. What do you consider semi-retired?
Yeah, semi-retired is going to look different for different people. I'm really enjoying this time in my life. And to be clear, it's not without its challenges. I was fortunate to be able to work out a part-time semi-retirement plan with an outstanding digital marketing company in Troy, Michigan, where I used to be a client, and then I worked full-time there for 2 years. And I'd like to give a shout out real quick, if you don't mind, to SSDM, a digital marketing company in Troy, Michigan. So it is this part-time work from home. I go to the office monthly. And I have to say, I miss being in the office. There's something about the direct contact and collaboration. And yes, there's communication tools like we're on right now that allow us to conduct business efficiently. But that human contact is so important, and it can be a problem in retirement if it's not managed properly. I don't miss the 1 hour drive each way, especially in the Michigan winters. So the semi-retirement gig is great if you can work it out. And it's really a nice transition from the work life that we had, that 40 to 50 hours a week, that was our life, into this newfound freedom. And again, the biggest benefit, the newfound freedom, is really the time that we have to do what we want. And one of those things for me is I wrote a book.
I've written 2 books, and so it's interesting. What prompted you to write your book, Are We Old Yet?
I am not a writer, so I give you credit for having written 2 books. Matter of fact, I would say to your people in watching, if anybody ever had a feeling that they want to write a book, I would highly encourage you. As a matter of fact, I would offer contact me through my website, and I'd be happy to take you through some of the steps and some of the things that I learned. It is difficult, but it is absolutely something that we all can do. If I can do it, anybody can do it. So yeah, writing a book was not on my bucket list, because I don't have a bucket list. But I will say that a small incident happened in my life 6 years ago that planted the seed for me to want to write a book. And I want to tell you the story, if it's okay. I attended my 45-year high school class reunion. And I'll do the math for you. At the time, I was 63 years old, and that's important to the story. So part of the weekend activities, a big group of us went to the homecoming football game. And I'll spare the details, they're all in the book. But Friday Night Lights was a wonderful time back in high school, and we had a great time this as well. But at the end of the game, a group of students leaving the game looked up at our group of 63-year-olds and shouted out, "Look at all those old people." And my reaction was to look around to see who could they be talking about, only to come to the realization that it was me and my friends. And so it was the words of that obnoxious teenager, and oops, I say that out loud, that triggered a thought for me the first time in my life. And that thought was, am I old? Am I old? And I wasn't ready to be old because I didn't know how to do it. Now, let's make no mistake. Getting old is easy. You live your life, you go to bed, you wake up the next day, you keep doing that over and over again until someday some 16-year-old is going to say, wow, you must be old. But I wanted to do it old. I wanted to do it well, to the best of my ability, to age well, or in this context, gracefully age, gray gracefully. So with that, it takes knowledge, intention, and effort and tons of research. And all of that research then became my book.
Garry, give us a brief overview of your book.
Okay. So the book is, and I will show it to you if you don't mind. The book is, Are We Old Yet? And it is a scientific, it's a result of all that scientific research that I did, in the nostalgia and personal stories, and written in a very casual style. There are 35 chapters in the book that I call conversations. And the conversations range from so many different topics: biological explanation of why we age. The scientists in the last 30 years have come to call these the 14 hallmarks of aging as to why we age. Our telomeres shorten, our senescent cells, our mitochondria dysfunction. I talk about that. Then I also talk about the search for the fountain of youth. And yes, there is a fountain of youth, but it's not quite what we had hoped it to be. I have a chapter on, am I a grumpy old man? And the answer is maybe. And then I also talk a great deal about the transition into retirement. But all of this book comes with a common theme about aging and an optimistic look on getting older. And really, retirement at this point in time in my life is a big part of this aging process.
Tell us about the transition into semi-retirement or retirement. I mean, it's like everyone has a different definition. Why don't you tell us your thoughts on that?
Yes, and there's so much said and written about retirement. I mentioned earlier that I'm enjoying the retirement, this newfound freedom, and having the free time to do all of the things that I enjoy. I cook now. When I retired, my wife, who's younger than I am, decided that she would retire from cooking. So I love to eat. So I took over the cooking duties. And I have to say, I am not a bad cook, and I'm enjoying that. I travel a bit, although I do plan to travel more in the future. And that's something that people as they retire do. I work out now more. I walk the dog every day, and I do some resistance training. And can I suggest that people, even before retirement, make that a priority, because it is so important in our life. And speaking of importance, I make it a point to be social. You know, when you leave retirement, you're leaving a lot of people and being surrounded a lot of people. And that's oftentimes can be a problem with our retirement life. As a matter of fact, there's an 84-year-old Harvard study that tells us one of the most important factors for aging well, more than exercise, more than diet, even more than a career achievement, is relationships. Robert Waldinger is a medical doctor and professor at Harvard, and the author of the book, The Good Life, Lessons from the World's Longest Scientific Study. And he has a quote that I want to read that's so important, sort of says it very distinctly. And here's what he said. If we had to take all 84 years of the study and boil it down to a single principle for living, it would be this: good relationships keep us healthier, happier, and lead to a longer life, period. So yes, I am enjoying retirement, staying healthy and happy according to the research. But I have to say, it's not perfect. And the transition can be very, very difficult. And it can be a major, major challenge for a host of different reasons.
What do you consider the good and bad features of the transition, for lack of a better word?
Yes, and transition is a fine word. It really is a transition. And the transition for some is short. I leave work on Friday, I'm retired on Monday, and there's nothing more. I'm doing this longer transition with a semi-retirement state. And some people never really want to embrace retirement in its totality, and all of those things are good. But in terms of one of the most difficult things for me, I'd like to share a story that sort of explains that concern, and a concern that I think many other people can relate to. So here's what happened. Soon after I retired, for me, semi-retired, I received a phone call on my cell phone, because that's where we get business calls now. And the caller wanted to sell me internet service for my company. Well, I had no interest in talking about internet service. So I simply said, I'm retired. And as soon as I mentioned the R word, the caller hung up. He didn't ask, he didn't say, have a good day. He didn't say, how am I doing? How's retirement? Hey, even who should I talk to in your stead? He just hung up. Well, I had two very different emotional reactions. Number one, I was happy that I didn't waste my time talking about internet service because that would have been dull and boring and a waste of time. But I was kind of sad and disturbed by his reaction to the word retirement. His sudden hanging up almost suggested that it was a waste of time for him to talk to me because I offered no value. And it sort of left me with a dichotomy of feelings toward the word retirement. And I was wondering if the word retirement really even defined who I am now. Because in a sense, it doesn't define what I do. It actually defines what I don't do. I don't work anymore. So yes, the R word or retirement can leave me and others with a very sense of a lost identity and searching for answers that you may even ask yourself the question, who am I now?
What are some of the challenging parts of retirement from your perspective, Garry?
Well, I would say that lost identity is probably one of the biggest ones that I experienced. And retirement is a big life transition. We go through life transitions a lot, and our identity changes as we go through those. So let's start with the fact that this is a big one. And our daily life changes, our goals change, often our emotions change, and even what makes us happy changes. And so it can lead to this feeling of a gap or sort of emptiness, if you will. And I would like to point out that this is somewhat an American characteristics because people in other countries like Japan, for example, they tend to identify through family and family history. In Denmark, it's a very relaxed attitude toward working. And so they put far more emphasis on leisure time and relationships. And by the way, I'll point out that Denmark is always ranked as one of the happiest countries in the world. And in Bhutan, they also emphasize a life of happiness because they put their gross national happiness, they actually measure it, above their GDP. But the experts will tell us, and the experts will give us some solutions. Matter of fact, Dr. Clay Routledge, professor of psychology at North Dakota State, provides these words of wisdom for managing this transition. He says, while careers are an important part of the picture, the solution is to diversify ourselves and look for interesting passions reflecting not what I do, but what I enjoy doing and who I want to be in the future. And another professor at Harvard University, Teresa Amable, suggests this about her own retirement. She says, my career is like a moving train that'll continue to move after I get off, and it can be very frightening. But in that train station, there's many others that can lead to a new experience. So I will say this, one place to look in one train, using Doctor's metaphor, is that purpose. Purpose can actually provide a new identity for us as we transition into this new, very frightening time in our life called retirement.
Now I'm going to interject because I like the word purpose, but I feel that another word is passion. That to be successful in retirement, you have to have a passion for something. It could be a passion for travel. It can be a passion for playing golf. It can be a passion for reading, for music, as well as, passion for interacting with people. But what's interesting, I've talked to a lot of people who never want to retire because they say, well, retirement is boring. And what is there? I don't like golf. I don't like cards. I want to keep working until I drop.
Yes. And Henry, you use the word passion, and that word can be used interchangeably with purpose. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about purpose, but you can be thinking of the word passion because they absolutely both fit in this scenario. So purpose, it should be a significant, or passion should be a significant factor in our entire life, but especially at this point in time in our life, which seem counterintuitive because we're we're in our easy years, in our golden years, and do we really even need purpose? And the answer is absolutely yes. And it's likely our identity and purpose will change through different stages of our life. And as many of us thought about our life and our purpose through life as almost self-generated around what was going on in our lifetime. When we were in school, our purpose or passion was to get good grades and get to the next college. And then after that, our purpose or passion was to find a career and do well there. And of course, when family came, that became much of our purpose and passion. I know for myself, I was not trying to change the world with my purpose. And when I have children, my purpose very much became part of my life. And although that may sound like a low aspiration, simply loving and caring for my family, in my mind and the minds of many others, it was truly meaningful. And as it turns out, Mother Teresa would agree with us. And she said, if you want to bring happiness into the world, go home and love your family. But the question is, what now? My kids are in New York and Chicago, and they're doing their own thing. And although I still love them, my purpose in life to try to help them is not as strong anymore. And of course, now the career, semi-retired or retired, is now come to an end. So this to some may look like a perfect storm of a purpose plunge. But we absolutely cannot turn our back, and you sort of identified it, purpose or passion. Matter of fact, there's a great deal of research that shows purpose in life is a major factor in our health, happiness, and our longevity. Now, my book goes into a number of studies about that and shows that, but I'd like to just mention a couple of them in our limited time together. The American Medical Association actually had a study that says purpose lowers all risk of mortality. We actually live longer with purpose and passion. Richard Leder, who is the author of The Power of Purpose, said one of the greatest secrets of happiness and longevity is to live with a sense of purpose. People who report having a purpose live up to 7 years longer than those who don't. And maybe one of the most credible sources in the world comes from the study of the blue zones. Now, for those of you who haven't heard of the blue zones are 5 areas in the world where people live longer lives than anywhere else. Matter of fact, they're the most centenarians, people who live over 100. And it's very important to note that these people aren't just old, they're very healthy and happy as well. So the researchers determined that there's a common lifestyle factors that causes and contributes to this long, happy life. And they call it the power of 9, the power of 9. And one of those factors of the power of 9, people live with purpose. In Okinawa, they call it ikigai. It's a reason to rise in the morning. And by the way, as the blue zones teach us, purpose does not have to be some grandiose things. Don't have to be curing cancer, although I hope someone does. But it can simply be, it's more about magnitude and more about involvement and passion. How passionate are we toward that purpose? And it could be a simple purpose like gardening or holding our grandchildren or being someone's best friend. It's just something that we look forward to for the next day. So yes, purpose and passion in retirement is one of the critical factors for living that long, healthy and happy life.
Garry, what can we do to recalibrate our purpose?
Yes, and that's where we are. So our children have left. We've left our job. We're looking around saying, I have a purpose gap. What can we do? And I've got a great source that's going to answer your question. But before I do, I'd like to mention just a few important fundamentals regarding finding our purpose. Number one, questions about purpose should never be answered with sweeping statements because everyone is different and our purpose will be unique to each individual. Number two, our purpose does change over time and is influenced by our life situation. So yes, retirement presents an absolute new situations likely to require a new evaluation of our purpose. Number three, don't worry about purpose. Don't compare ourselves to others. Think about it as just something I want to work toward and make my life better on a daily basis. So anyway, I'm going to answer your question. Much has been written about purpose and how to find it, but a great source is taught at the University of Michigan, go blue, by Dr. Vic Streecher. And his class is called Finding Purpose and Meaning in Life, and it sounds perfect, and it is. You can take it as a student, or it's available online free through Coursera, and I took the class, and I highly recommend it. So Professor Streecher provides a number of thoughts on how to find your why, or your purpose, if you will. The first step, he says, is to mine your life for threads that reveal your gifts, your passions, your values, and most importantly, never stop being curious. So he offers 8 questions that you need to ask yourself, and I'd like to share those with you.
Yes.
First of all, he says, what matters to you? What's important to you? That's the first and foremost. Just what is important in your life? Number 2, what are your values? Number 3, who inspires you? Number 4, what causes do you care about? Number 5, what are you grateful for? Number 6, what are your strengths? Number 7, and this is important, I think, they all are. What do you like to do? Just what do you like to do? And number 8, how do you want to be remembered? And I'd like to add one. What have you always wanted to accomplish? What have you always wanted to do, but have never had the chance? So yes, that is how he suggests, and the class goes on with many other suggestions and many other ideas. And matter of fact, one of the things he says, and I'm going to show you, he says, an easy place to start is look at the wallpaper on your phone, because oftentimes if something's important to you, you'll put it on your phone. And it worked for me, and I will just show you. There's a picture of my 2 kids. So yes, they are certainly have been in the past and will always be part of my purpose. So, finding our new identity through purpose is something we absolutely should explore, because the experts can tell us that it adds value to our life, it adds health, happiness, and certainly many, many extra years to our life as well.
I'm going to flip the coin on you, and that is a close friend of mine who passed away at the beginning of COVID used to say that life is filled with minefields. And as we age, I think we spend more and more time at doctor's offices, and that's a true fact, actually. So the question is, how do you deal with curveballs where, either someone is faced with dementia or someone is faced with serious illnesses, sometimes life-threatening, sometimes not? And how does this fit in with the challenges of are we old yet, or gracefully graying, for lack of a better word?
Yeah, Henry, life at any age, I would suggest, life at any age gives us curveballs, does it not? When we were in our career and we thought we were doing great, and the company all of a sudden downsized, and we were part of that downsize. And actually that happened to me at my first job at Ford Motor Company. I was going to be a lifelong Ford employee, and I got the call and said, oh, by the way, sales aren't good. You don't work here anymore. That's a curveball that at that age I had to deal with. And, quite frankly, I wasn't smart enough to deal with it well, but I got through it. So I would say the things that you mentioned, health issues certainly are one of those curveballs that we deal with in our years. And I don't want to be Pollyanna about this. And there's a chapter in my book that talks about optimism. And optimism and the ways we deal with optimism and look at life is certainly one of those things that can help us get through that. Winston Churchill had a great quote, and I'll try to get through it. But he says that a pessimist is someone looks at every opportunity and sees a problem, whereas an optimist looks at every problem and sees an opportunity. And certainly, and again, I don't want to sound too Pollyanna, certainly some of those problems are something that is very difficult to deal with, and health is one of those. And I would say that brings up another whole point in our health. There are things that we can do, the whole eat well, sleep well, exercise, and there's many other things. And I outlined some of those things in the book that we can be healthier. I had a conversation on my walk this morning with a neighbor and dealing with a situation in his family where there's a health consideration in an older person. And yes, those are curveballs, Henry, and those are things that we all have to deal with. And there's not an easy answer. And I hope I've provided a couple of thoughts in dealing with those curveballs.
So it's like aging is a process, and there are opportunities, and it's a matter, really, we've got to Carpe diem, seize the day, and make the most of every day. Make the most of today. We don't know what tomorrow will bring, but Garry, you've really shared some awesome thoughts. Your book sounds excellent. And what I'd like to ask from you before we sign off is what the final thoughts that you would like to share with our viewers?
Yeah, I'd like to close with a story and something that happened to me that sort of affected my attitude toward retirement and the R word. Last year, I attended my daughter's graduation from Michigan State. Go Green. The commencement speakers delivered messages of encouragement, just like you would expect them to do. Our future, reaching new goals, respecting yourself, hopes for health and happiness as the graduates are facing those challenges, transition in life. And as I sat there in the crowd, I thought, is this message for me? I almost felt guilty that I was stealing the message for myself that was clearly intended for the students. And so thoughts of managing our life through transition, the college students were going through a big one, a very, very big one. And I, at the time, am going through a very large one as well in the transition into retirement. But both of them say transition leading to a future of health, happiness, and reaching new goals. And that's exactly what a positive approach to retirement should be. A positive approach to retirement, reaching new goals of happiness, health, and longevity. So the question that I came up with in my mind, using that whole graduation metaphor, is retirement almost like graduating from the best university in the world, the University of Life? And certainly during these last 40 years of working, I have learned a great deal, probably, if I may say, more than I did in college. And so as the commencement speakers sort of pronounced that this is not the end, it's just a new beginning, I thought to myself, I love that. Retirement is really not the end. It's simply a new beginning. And that's how I like to see and how I like to look at retirement.
Garry, thank you for sharing our new beginnings. This has been an excellent and very thought-provoking conversation. Garry Cole, thank you so much for being our guest on Gracefully Greying. I want to thank our viewers for watching Gracefully Greying, and of course our sponsors for helping make Gracefully Greying possible. Thank you so much.